Hi there, my name is Grace Huyn, and I'm excited to be applying for SDSU's MFT program this year. Thank you in advance for taking the time to review my application. When I was young, I observed how my mother, the youngest of 10 other siblings, stepped up to be the primary caregiver for my grandma, who suffered from type 2 diabetes, was immobile, had severe depression, and suffered from many other chronic disabilities. I watched my mother coordinate with doctors to the best of her ability despite her limited speaking skills and understanding. I watched her fight with my grandpa because they would disagree on how my grandmother should be cared for. But I noticed that even if we were going on a family trip, my mother always wanted to insist that my grandma come with us, despite the struggles of transporting her because she was overweight and we'd have to manually carry her into the car and out of the car and into her wheelchair. And sometimes we would have to leave early because my grandma was too fatigued. But despite this, my mother always said we should bring my grandma. Sometimes I would hear my mom wrestling throughout the night to gather her things and quickly leave her home so that she could meet my mother at the hospital, and she would drive an hour at 4 a.m. to go see my grandmother and make sure she's okay. I watched her make tough decisions regarding resuscitating my grandma if she was on the brink of death. And even with opposing viewpoints from my grandma stating that she would rather go when the time comes, and my grandpa insisting that we resuscitate her no matter what, even if it causes her a lot of pain, it made it really difficult for my mother to, she was teetering between these two decisions, and ultimately she just had to trust in herself. And it was overall a really stressful time for my mom. And with such a high level of care and time dedicated to my grandma, it did place a strain on our family and her relationship with my father. As a child, witnessing how draining and stressful caregiving was for my mom, all I could think about was how could I have helped her and my grandma during those challenging times. And while I didn't have the tools at the time to help them, nor the understanding and maturity, this life lesson has led me to my path today. As a case manager working with older adults and their caregivers, it brings me joy to be able to provide resources and knowledge that can help alleviate the stress that older adults and their caregivers face. Over time, I realized that culture greatly influences family dynamics and caregiving as well. I noticed that with Asian culture, Asian people tend to emphasize personally caring for their aging parents and dislike the idea of placing them in a care home. While in Western culture, I noticed that more of my clients were in assisted living facilities and care homes as it was normalized. And I find that relationship interesting between caregivers and older adults, um, as caregiving can change the relationship between, aging parents and their children. With SDSU's emphasis on social constructionism, systems theory, and culture, I hope to dive deeper into how societal narratives and cultural norms have perpetuated the stigma and ageism towards older adults. When talking to my older clients, they would tell me, as a result of poor mental health care and finding it difficult to seek the care that they need, it increases how much they take their medication because they misinterpret their symptoms of depression and anxiety for pain, and as a result, they take more pain medication. They tell me how they would visit the ER or the hospital more frequently, how their caregivers began experiencing high levels of stress and burnout, causing them to dissociate from providing quality care. And even the rates of suicide have increased for older adults. And by exploring how these constructs shape perceptions and influence policymaking, I aim to uncover the ways to challenge and reshape these narratives to provide inclusion, dignity, and equitable care for this population. As a case manager working with 50 diverse clients, I've conversed with people from all walks of life. I hear them when they say that financial instability is a huge barrier to accessing good mental health care, as attending in-person appointments can be tough, how it's difficult to navigate technology to find the right providers for them, how frustrating it is when they cannot receive insurance coverage because certain treatments the insurances didn't deem were necessary, and how awful it can feel to have insurances dictate their care. And with my experience, I have strengthened my active listening skills, my cultural competence, um, finding resources that are most helpful for this specific population, and my advocacy skills, which is very important for providing high quality care. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.